3 days back, on an unfateful day, Nepalese local airlines called as Yeti Airlines crashed on a riverside, carrying 72 passengers and some crew members. Unfortunately, none of them could survive.
नेपाल के पोखरा विमान हादसे में अब तक निकाले गए 68 शव, 5 भारतीयों को की भी मौत। प्लेन में सवार थे कुल 72 लोग। तकनीकी खराबी की वजह से हादसा।
Certain decades back, same was the story that we are seeing with Yeti Airlines. The same was the story with the Korean Airlines. In the latter half of the 1970s, 70s decade, Korean Airlines was seeing so many fatal accidents that it ranked at the bottom of the air safety standards and its ranking. Lot of Americans American soldiers who were posted in Korea were advised by the government to not take up Korean Airlines anymore. Such were the loose standards of safety. So to address that problem, Sri Lankan airline ex-captain Ratawate conducted an investigation, and today I am going to focus about that investigation. Here he has enlisted 7 critical or vital factors which leads to air crash investigation. It's a very thorough investigation. Even Malcolm Gladwell in his wonderful book Outliers talks about this. So let me first tell you about the mistakes, and then I will elaborate a little later on that to provide you the distinction. The first factor which leads to fatal air accidents according to Ratawate was a delayed flight. Now there are a lot of flights which are delayed, but this is so one of the first factor which leads to an ultimate air crash is a flight which is little unusually delayed, which is just not delayed but little more delayed. So that is the first factor. The second factor is bad weather conditions. Now many times when we fly, weather is bad. Sometimes there is a downpour, you have clouds, the visibility is low. So these bad weather conditions, do they always lead to fatal air crashes? No, absolutely not. But here on a long delayed flight, when the bad weather conditions meets that factor, that weather is not that bad that the flight could not take off or it could not fly, but it was unusually worse. Third factor which then complicates the matter in a string of events, on a delayed flight with worse bad weather conditions, if there is undisciplined crew members not following the protocols of air safety, taking the rules for granted, not behaving well with the passengers, fighting within among themselves, not having the discipline. So I think people who run businesses or who works in corporates can relate to this, that when you're working on large, big, complex businesses, these kind of things happen because of the culture. The fourth factor is, when you take the 3 factors, move to the fourth factor. The fourth factor is the pilot is flying a new model of plane. He could be an experienced pilot with lot of flying hours behind him, a competent one, a skilled one who has never had any record of any mishap. But this time on this fatal flight, he is flying a new model of plane. And fifth, combined to that, he is going to a new destination, maybe a new airport, maybe a new city, or a new airport in that city, or somewhere where a new airstrip has been laid. So any of these contributing factors is the fifth factor. And sixth is, on this long delayed flight with more than worse bad weather conditions, unruly, indisciplined crew member with a pilot flying a new model of plane and going to a new destination. The sixth and the most fatal is lack of sleeping hours for the pilot or the crew members. So here sometimes even this also happens, that he has already been tired on a long delayed flight, and then immediately he has to rush to the other flight. There are some other issues also that happens. So instead of taking a nap, he decides to skip that and board the flight. The seventh factor, which I have not mentioned here in the PPT, but I would like to talk on that as well. Ratawate mentions this as a very big cultural influence. If you closely observe the pilots of the international airlines, they are from different ethnicity. So in ethnicity, this PDI, the full form of this is Power Difference Index. So on one part you have a cluster of Westerners having US, Canada, then you have Europeans, then you have Australians. These are on one part, and the South Asian in the middle, and at the bottom of it is African crew members or pilots or air traffic controller. So here what happens is that these set of people carry more power compared to the South Asians, that is Indian, Pakistanis, the Chinese or the Koreans or the South Asians in general, and the least are the air Africans. So it's a very interesting thing what happens and why it leads to fatal accidents is, now if the first pilot is from this cluster and the co-pilot or the assistant pilot is from the African ethnicity, so it is observed that on these flights where air crashes have taken place, even if this pilot is committing mistake, the co-pilot does not muster the courage to challenge him or to even question him or even to correct him. So many a times the mistakes has been caught, the co-pilot is aware of that mistake, but he is not addressing it to the first pilot, and which then leads to further mistakes and consequentially to the air crash. So these are the 7 factors. Now friends, you may be wondering, and even this came to and this would come to anybody's mind, that we have mentioned, Ratwate mentions these 7 factors. So on every flight it is not possible to have all the ideal conditions. There would be some or the other factors which are missing. So there could be bad weather condition, a pilot could be flying to a new destination, but then still why don't all the flights crash? The air safety records is the best in all the transport medium. So the reason is that for all of them, for an air crash to happen, Ratavate says that all these 7 factors have to come together and happen on a single day. That's what leads to crash. Similarly in business as well. So now I am coming to the business lesson of this. Similarly in our businesses, there are critical and vital factors for every business, and when these, so first thing you have to do is you have to identify all the big vital factors that could lead to a big mistake. Then you have to ensure that you put enough security layers or enough checks and balances that even if some mistakes happen, you don't allow all of them to come together. So of course, when you are running a business with people, when you are running services business, when you are running a manufacturing plant, some other mistakes will definitely happen because that is the inherent nature of complex business systems. But then the checks, balances, following of SOPs, having checklists, having audits, having extra people supervising, having external agency look into and consult you on the matters of where big mistakes could happen. These are all the layers of security. So that is my leadership lesson, that first accept that of course there are inherent mistakes, that the system is prone and vulnerable and susceptible to inherent mistakes. But as a leader, you put enough security layers and balances and checks at every level that this can be averted. Yeah. Now coming to the concluding part, same is also shared in the Swiss cheese model. What is a Swiss cheese model? It is a model for risk analysis and risk management. We also teach this in our project management. Now in the Swiss cheese model, the entire system is seen as slices of Swiss cheese. It is believed that all the layers, all the business processes, all the parts are just like the Swiss cheese. They have inherent holes or air gaps inside them. Each layer has got certain flaws. So now the whole idea is that when does a big mistake happen? A big mistake happens here when all the layers, some or the other, allow this to pass through. So as a leader, you have to see to it that additional cheese is placed in these holes so that mistake is averted here. Now let's say for example, even if there is a trespassing at all the levels, still this mistake should be thwarted over here. So the lesson is, guys, put checks and balances, that is one. Second, extensively use checklists so you can take care of this error prone mind with ineptitude mistakes. So thank you guys. I hope you have learned the lesson today. This is Kaustubh signing off. Thank you.